Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're jumping into something a bit different. A really personal account of what it's actually like to live in mainland China.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the usual news headlines for a bit. Our mission here is to unpack, the surprising day-to-day stuff, the little cultural quirks, and just the feel of living there, all through one person's eyes.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, how one person's story, their experiences can give us such a complex picture of a whole culture.
Exactly.
We're going to explore how these personal interactions, the routines, even the small frustrations really shape understanding and often challenge assumptions.
Yeah.
So as we go through this, maybe think about what details really jump out at you.
Good point. So where does this account come from?
Okay, so the source is an excerpt from a work called Living China, a cultural tapestry. It's very much a first-person thing.
Right.
And the author's pretty clear up front. They talk about having a love-hate relationship specifically with mainland China, not Taiwan. And they add Taiwan is, just Taiwan.
Right.
So that just sets the stage, defines the focus for us.
Got it. Mainland China. So let's get into it. The author really dives straight in with some pretty strong first impressions.
They certainly do.
Saying China reeks of bureaucracy and pork.
Mm.
Wow. And then straight into these, cultural observations?
Yeah, like the women obsessed with Hello Kitty jackets and men with skinny jeans. It immediately throws up these images, these contrasts.
Definitely. And it sounds like you're always being watched.
Mm-hmm. That comes across strongly.
They stare at you if you don't look like them, if you don't dress like them. Even about wearing a jacket in March because the mornings are cold.
And that really highlights, a big difference in cultural norms, doesn't it? About personal space, about just observing people.
Yeah, being the focus like that must feel strange.
What's totally normal in one culture can be quite jarring in another. And simply looking different makes you stand out. It really shapes your daily experience.
Yeah.
And speaking of daily experience, the sheer number of people that comes through loud and clear.
Oh, yeah.
They say that Chinese queue up even to pee. It's true.
Wow.
And confirmed. There are long lines awaiting your presence everywhere you go.
Everywhere.
Seems like it. And that's not just, inconvenient. It fundamentally changes how you perceive space, patience, efficiency. It shows how norms adapt to just massive population density.
That really puts it in perspective. You'd think with all those crowds, the queues, maybe people would be a bit gruff, impatient.
You might think that, yeah. But what's interesting here is the author finds the opposite mostly.
Really?
Yeah, despite the density, they say, most people here are very friendly. They even mention bank staff being helpful.
Okay.
There's a funny bit about getting their name right at the bank. It only took the lady 3 attempts. Yes, madam, it is Zane, not Zhang. Zhang or Zhang.
Huh. So some warmth there despite the language hurdle.
Exactly. And even their last name, Shah, apparently sounded like Gigi, which means thank you, led to a good laugh.
Nice. So
Yeah.
Moments of connection.
Definitely. But it also shows the other side, the practical challenges, the rules. The author tried to, bribe the teller for more than the $500 daily limit for foreigners.
Oh, how did that go?
Didn't work. The teller just points to the CCTV camera hovering above her head and says, camera watching, sorry. Apparently, private exchange places have brutal rates.
Ah, so friendly people, but strict rules. That's quite the mix.
It paints a really nuanced picture, doesn't it? Personal connection versus, rigid systems.
It really does.
Yeah.
And that need for patience, it seems to pop up elsewhere too, like getting a haircut.
Oh, yeah, the haircut story. You apparently have to be patient.
And the salon description is something else. 3 huge posters.
Right. A shirtless Channing Tatum, a famished Justin Bieber, and some Chinese celebrity with poppy red hair.
And you have to point to the poster for the style you want.
Can you imagine? The author's dilemma is, I can barely see any hair on Channing Tatum. Justin has a gelled, spiked up, retro sort of a hairstyle. Doesn't match my professional look.
So that leaves the Chinese celebrity. But just the cut, not the bright red color. They had to specify.
Exactly. It's those specific kind of mundane things that turn into these little adventures. It brings the whole experience to life.
Totally. And that unique context, it definitely applies to getting around too. Public transport sounds intense.
It's intense is probably the word. For the metro, the advice is leave your manners behind while you are at it.
Oh, wow.
Picture this scene. Pushing, punching, kicking, shouting, angry faces, sweaty bodies, flying bags, crying babies.
Good grief.
By the end, you're bruised, battered, exhausted, but you are on the train. and getting off isn't any better. People pushing in while you're trying to get out. Another round of getting beaten up.
That sounds absolutely brutal. Just
Yeah.
a daily battle. Is there anything redeeming about the commute described?
From this account, honestly, it just sounds like a consistent high-stress experience, and taxis aren't much better.
No.
We're told roads are usually choked and it takes an endless number of hours to reach home, plus the tax meter keeps piling up.
Ugh. So just moving around is a major challenge.
It really highlights the scale of city life there, the logistical hurdles in such a packed environment.
Definitely makes you appreciate space.
Yeah.
But then, okay, let's switch gears. Food. The author says it's huge.
Oh, absolutely central. The Chinese love food. It is almost like eating is the national game of China.
A national game. I like that.
It really speaks to how important food is, socially, culturally. It's how people connect, celebrate. You see that in a lot of collectivistic cultures.
Right. And the variety sounds wide.
Very wide. The author notes they literally eat everything from a dog to a cat to a mouse and even a snake, which they add, I find it kind of gross.
Yeah, that's different. But they eat with colleagues.
They do. They enjoy fish, squid, shrimp, veggies. While the colleagues might have pork chops, rice cooked in pork broth. Big difference there.
But they manage.
Oh, yeah. Proudly states, I have mastered the art of eating with chopsticks, even rice. It took a while, but I am a pro now.
That's impressive. Takes practice.
It really does. And it shows how, shared things like eating can bridge gaps, even if the details aren't fully understood.
What do you mean?
Well, the author mentions colleagues asking why they don't eat pork. Trying to explain dietary restrictions, like halal, is hard because, well, there's maybe not much exposure to Islam.
Ah, okay. The context isn't there.
Exactly. Some are curious about what makes food halal. But despite these sort of communication gaps, the author enjoys eating out with them. Describes conversations as lively, even if the sentences exchanged are limited and the laughter shared is loud.
That's actually really lovely, finding connection even when things aren't perfectly understood.
Precisely.
The author also mentions humor. Chinese humor can be offensive, amusing, and strange.
But with the passage of time, one gets comfortable with it.
Yeah. That suggests a real process of adaptation, doesn't it? Getting used to a different style of humor.
It does. But despite all these positive interactions, adapting, making connections, when asked about raising a family there.
The answer is a definite no.
Why is that? Cites that China is too crowded, polluted, and populated.
Wow. Straightforward.
It's a powerful summary, isn't it, of the challenges that are always there, underneath the warmth and the good moments. It really brings us back to that love-hate relationship mentioned right at the start.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
So, wrapping it all up, how does the author feel overall about the place, the people?
The conclusion is quite warm, actually. Chinese people are warm, friendly, a little too loud, but happy.
A little too loud, but happy. I like that.
And the final thought, it has been a pleasure to be exposed to China in such a way.
Yeah. You know, this whole deep dive is really giving us such a personal, unfiltered view, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Moving past the big headlines to what one person actually lived through.
Definitely.
It really captured those contradictions, the jarring smells, the intense crowds, difficult commutes, but then also that surprising warmth, the shared laughs, the connections. It perfectly sums up that love-hate thing and that feeling of it being a real pleasure to have experienced it.
And reflecting on it, these individual stories, they just offer such unique insights, don't they, into how complex a culture really is.
Yeah.
All those details, the cues, needing patience for everything from banking to haircuts with Channing Tatum,
Yeah.
the intense metro rides where manners go out the window, the very specific food culture where eating is the national game, even the struggle to explain why you don't eat pork.
Right.
All of that, it points to this bigger theme of cultural adaptation, of trying to understand these specific, sometimes clashing details. They paint a much, much richer picture than any broad statement ever could.
That's so true.
So, this deep dive really showed us how a place can be tough, really challenging, but also deeply rewarding at the same time. Maybe something for you, the listener, to think about. What cultural habits or maybe surprising contradictions have you noticed? In your own community, perhaps, or when traveling? Things that, when you look closer, tell a much richer story. What does it actually mean to know a place beyond just the stereotypes?